In some of my interviews, I talk about my favorite translation of the Bible. And you also see a lot of debate about, well, I think this Bible is better and that Bible is better, and so on. So I thought I would just spend some time to go over what translation of the Bible I find helpful for me. And if you're new to the faith, if you're coming to the faith in your 30s or your 40s, and you want to understand sacred scripture better, maybe this video will be helpful for you on your road towards the faith. A lot of people are getting catechized by Taylor Marshall, doing a great job. I no criticism for Taylor, but I take a very different view than Taylor Marshall on translation of the Bible. And I'm going to just give you my layman's terms why I have a different view on which text we should use to read the Bible in. And this is just my view. People are easily can just leave their comments below, leave their criticisms below, give me some feedback, let me know what you think. But this is just my layman's review on different translations of the Bible. So what I have here, I have 10 Bibles for you. So I have my Italian, my Spanish, my Greek, Latin, the New Jerusalem Bible edition, a Slovak translation, and I have the Navarre Bible, the New Jerusalem edition. That's a different edition, a previous one, the Polish one, the Word on Fire, and the Douay-Rheims. So I'm just going to use this as an exercise so that people understand when you're taking a translation of the Bible, it is, always keep in mind, it is a translation. It has been translated by somebody who took a different text and translated it. And sometimes what you're dealing with is a translation of a translation of a translation. So if we take, for example, Douay-Rheims Bible, this is the one that everybody seems to be talking about. Taylor Marshall promotes it all the time. This, as far as I remember, is a translation of the Latin Bible. It's a translation of St. Jerome's Vulgate Bible. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing. I just find this Bible, the translation of this Bible, this 15th, 16th, 17th century English style of writing, very difficult for me. So personally, I find the language I find difficult to read. Now, if you've grown up with this Bible since you were a child, and this is the Bible you read at home, and this is what you're comfortable with, you don't need to change. You're perfectly fine. If this is the text that you find is comfortable for you, perfect. If somebody comes to me, they're come new to the faith, they haven't any Bible, and they're looking for a translation of the Bible, I would never give them this. Because for me, it's just that language, the English version of nearly King James style English, post-Reformation English, is just too confusing for me. And it just clouds the message of what is actually being written there. Because remember, whenever you're reading, if you're not reading sacred scripture in Aramaic or Hebrew or Greek, if you're not reading it in those three languages, you are reading a translation. And even if you're reading it in Greek, there happen to be different manuscripts, Greek manuscripts of sacred scripture. They're actually, because it was copied, by monks, scholars over the years. So you have copies of copies of copies of copies, and so one copy could have gone to one monastery and been recopied several times. Another copy, and then hundreds of years later, these copies meet, copies of, and lo and behold, we find differences. Oh, well, look, this word is different, and that spelling is different, and this spelling is different. This is a whole world that people don't understand when they're talking about scripture. So, and I'm not an expert here. I want to be very clear. I'm a layman. I didn't study biblical studies in the university. It's all just my love for the scripture. I love reading it, and so this is what happened. So if you're not reading it in Hebrew or in Greek, then you're always reading a translation. And there actually are several different Greek versions of sacred scripture. Not massively different, slight differences from what I believe. Now, I'm not an expert here, so any of the experts, please reach out. But I'm going to take you through 10 of these Bibles. Now, I bought this based on listening to Taylor Martin. He was going on and on about this Bible. I said, I have to see what it's like. Bought it. I do like how the red is when Christ speaks, they've underlined it in red. I do like that, but I just find the language jars a little bit with me, because it's not the language we use today. If you're going to translate something into the language of today, you use it so that somebody can understand it or can understand the meaning. So let me just go through a simple exercise here. I'm going to take you through the Gospel of St. John. This is a gospel I learned in Latin. So we were made learn it learn it off by heart in Latin, which I thought was torturous. I look back, I wish I had done more of it, but it's a gospel that I know in Latin. So I'm just going to start with the Latin text. So I'll start, and I'm going to do 1 to 6, verses 1 to 6, chapter 1 to 6. In principio erat verbum, et verbum erat apud Deum, et Deus erat verbum. Hoc erat in principio apud Deum. Omnia per ipso facta sunt, et sine ipso factum est nihil quod factum est. In ipso vita erat, et vita erat lux hominum. Et lux in tenebris lucet, et tenebrae non comprenderunt. Fuit homum missus ad Deo, cui nomen erat Johannes. So, that's the Latin. I'm not expecting everybody to understand you. I'm just starting that as the go-through point, and then I'm going to go through some translations of the Latin. Now remember, that Latin that I just read is a translation. St. Jerome has translated that into Latin. So that's a translation. So when people need to keep this in their mind when they're talking about this. So taking the Douay-Rheims, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Generally very similar in all translations in English. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was made nothing that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. There was a man sent by God, whose name was John. So that's the Douay-Rheims Bible. Going to move on now to the Word on Fire. People might criticize them for doing this, that it's, I don't know, I've seen it's great. I loved this New Testament. I just thought it was a beautiful Bible. The way that's printed is just everything about it. The presentation, the smell, the leather, it's beautiful. So 1 to 6. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. That what has come into being, in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. In the darkness the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. There was a man sent by God, whose name was John. So, different translation. If we're looking here in the Douay-Rheims, they were talking about the same in verse 2, and here we're talking about, they've translated it as him. So different translation, different wording. In verses 2 in the Douay-Rheims, the same was in the beginning, and here we have he was in the beginning. So that's another translation. Moving on to New Jerusalem Bible. And in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning. Through him all things came into being. Not one thing came into being except through him. What has come into being in him was life, life that was the light of men. And light shines in the darkness, and the darkness could not overpower it. Another translation of that same text. The Navarre Bible in English. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent by God whose name was John. So, again, a different English translation. So which one is correct? And I just thought I'd venture into different languages here for a second. So, because it's very important just to understand, we're talking about a translation. We're talking about how we translate a different language. And in Italian, there's this phrase, traduttore, traditore, translator, traitor, because it's nearly impossible always to get exactly right a translation. So, Polish Bible. And I'm just going to read it in Polish, and then I'm going to make a commentary on something, because it's really fascinating to see how different people translate the Bible into different languages. Na początku było słowo, I słowo było u Boga, I Bogiem było słowo. Ono było na początku Boga, wszystko przez nie się stało, I bez niego nic nie się stało, co się stało. W nim było życie, I życie było światłością ludzi, a światłość w ciemności świecie, I w ciemność jej nie ogarnięła. Anyway, I'm going to focus on verse 2 here, because it says, Ono było na początku Boga. So they're using the word this, because in Latin it's hoc, this, and they've used the neutral word, okay, ono. So you have onna, ono. So he, she, and it. So they've said it, or hoc, the translation. In some places in the Douay-Rheims, it's the same was, or he was. So just to get you an idea of the different translations and how different languages are translating these texts. So that's the Polish one. Slovak. And I'm just going to read the first two verses. Na początku bolo slovo, a slovo bola u Boha, a to slovo bolo Boha. Ono bolo na początku u Boha. So the Slovak has done the exactly same as the Polish. They've used the neutral word ono to translate ok, which you have in Latin. I think this is the newer version of the New Jerusalem Bible. And let me see, did they change anything here? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning. Okay, so that's the same as the previous version of that Bible. Spanish. Biblia de Jerusalén. En principio existía la palabra, y la palabra estaba con Dios, y la palabra era Dios. Ella estaba en principio con Dios. Todo se hizo con ella, y sin ella no se hizo nada de cuanto existía. So here, that word hoc in Latin, they've translated as she, because they're talking about the word, which is feminine in Spanish. So you're talking, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. She was in the beginning with God. And people might think, oh, that's very woke language that they're using here in Spanish. But if you understand Spanish and you understand that palabra, word, is la palabra, the word is feminine, and you're talking about, and you're translating hoc from Latin into Spanish, you would say ella estaba en principio con Dios. In Polish, they've used the neutral ono. But that's because the word słowo in Polish is a different gender. This is the fascinating thing when you're translating the Bible into different languages. You're going to be confronted with trying to translate it into the language that people will understand. Okay, so that's the Spanish one, and then you have the Italian, which I used a lot. In principio era il verbo, e il verbo era preso Dio, il verbo e Dio era il verbo. Questi era in principio presso Dio. Tutto per mezzo di lui fu fatto, e senza di lui non fu fatto nulla di ciò che è stato fatto. In lui era la vita, e la vita era la luce dei uomini, e la luce nei tenebre brilla, e le tenebre non la compressero. Non era lui la luce. 6. Fu un nome mandato da Dio, il nome era Giovanni. Anyway, so you can get an idea. Now, when you're translating from Latin to Italian or Latin to Spanish, these are Latin languages, so there's going to be a lot easier to translate. But it's just to give you an idea. It's just to give people an idea of the different translations and different languages. And you're trying to convey a text, convey a message into a different language so people will understand. So when people are saying what's the best, because if somebody can be very pure, the Anglosphere, sometimes you're saying, no, the Douay-Rheims is the only thing I'm going to look at. I'm not going to look at any other translation. And this is it. Don't come to me with the Navarre Bible. And you see this in the comments. People are commenting about different translations. And, well, I wouldn't have gone for that translation, and I wouldn't have gone for the other translation. What I recommend people to do, this is like, if you look at sacred scripture like an onion, start peeling it. Start going into the different layers of sacred scripture. Start by reading a Bible. You'll be amazed how many people haven't read the Bible end to end. Start by reading a Bible, approved by good Catholic authorities. You've got lots of them. Mitch Packard, Jesuit, he's done lots of studies in the Bible. The Navarre Bible, they've done different booklets on different books of the Bible. So that's why I just like them. I do have a commentary on some other one. Where is it? Now I've lost it. But you can start with that, and then you can start expanding out. Why don't you learn a little bit of Hebrew? Start learning Hebrew. Start, for example, going through the Psalms in Hebrew in your pastime. If it's something that interests you, just expand out your knowledge of sacred scripture. Learn a little Greek. Let me see, what do you have here? You can buy Greek cards. I had these from Rome, and you can just learn different words in Greek, and just keep building up your knowledge of sacred scripture, of the language, the language of the Bible, the language of that the Bible would have come from, and that will give you a better depth of the message of the gospel. And that's why I really don't recommend people get hung up on one particular translation of the Bible that was done 200 or 300 years ago, as if that is the only translation we should be using. Because even the Our Father in English, there is whole treatises, there's whole documents on translation of the Our Father. Epiousion, if I'm mistaken, that's the word that in Greek that we translate our daily bread, and people say, well, it's not really that, it's something else. And so what you should be doing is, expanding out on different concepts in sacred literature, different words, and giving people a broader view of sacred scripture, of what was written in the different languages. Even if you look at Psalms, for example, the Psalms, and there was, in the 1950s, somebody tried to retranslate them into Latin from Hebrew. And these Psalms had been used in the Catholic world for centuries and centuries in breviaries and so forth. And this new translation, just people couldn't get their heads around this new translation. The rhyme and the rhythm and the way it was translated. And it wasn't that it was very badly translated. It wasn't like they set out to destroy the Psalms. It was just... it was a different translation using a different form of Latin, a more classical form maybe. I don't have the whole ins and outs of that, but that's really what happened at the time. Can you imagine? Because the Psalms were written in Hebrew. And there's many Psalms, if you go through them in Hebrew, like there's some Psalms that are written, every line of the Psalm is a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet, 22 in sequence. It's totally lost in a translation. You don't see the rhyme, the rhythm, the poetic nature of some of the Psalms are kind of lost in translation. So this has gone on a bit longer than I thought, but I just thought I'd give you a few examples of how different verses are translated in the Bible. Christ didn't come to save all masculine men. He came to save all men, which means all people. And so in some Bibles you say all men, all people. I mean, it's a translation of what was said in Latin. In Spanish, if you're asking somebody how many brothers and sisters you have, you would say cuántos hermanos tienes, and hermanos is masculine, and so literally if you were to translate it, it would say how many brothers do you have. In English, we wouldn't translate it that way. We would say how many siblings or many brothers and sisters do you have. Do you know what I mean? And this is the whole thing about translation. It's always going to be fraught with problems. It's always going to be open for debate. I'd say we'll be having this debate for hundreds of years on translating the sacred scripture. And that's why it's good to, if somebody can expand it out, can give you a class on the Bible, on literature, on sacred scripture, on different words in sacred scripture, which I thought Words and Fire did a very good job, because they actually do have different Greek words that they've introduced into the Bible, and I thought it was really beautiful. And if people are going to criticize it, then go out and do it yourself and present something different, with your views on it and your commentary and so forth. But I don't think we should ever jump in and say that a specific translation of a Bible, if it's approved in the Catholic, is completely, oh no, that's not the translation I would use. I would use this, I would use that. It's a translation. That's what the first thing you need to get into your mind when you're reading the Bible. If you're not reading it in in Hebrew or Greek, and there's different versions of that. If you're not reading those languages, you're reading a translation, and sometimes you're reading a translation of a translation. The Douay-Rheims, as far as I'm aware, is a translation from Latin, and the Bible wasn't written in Latin. It was written in other languages. So that's just my debate on this. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. It's important that we open this beautiful topic of sacred scriptures up to people to understand. It's amazing. I mean, I'm still learning. You can read the Bible, and then years later hear another commentary or another meditation. Just in the letter of the Hebrews, you could spend hours going through just that little letter of the Hebrews, and the stuff that we don't even know today and stuff in the Bible. It's quite fascinating. And I certainly wouldn't go around saying, no, you have to lose that translation. I would just say, start by reading it, and then start by expanding your knowledge of the Bible and understanding what was the original text, how it's been translated, what did it mean, and then you can create your knowledge of sacred scripture wider and wider and wider. I don't really think people are intentionally going out there to translate and deform the Bible, because Protestants generally, if they see us going off track, doing a crazy translation, they'll call it out. Well, look, these Catholics are gone crazy translating this. It mean nothing to the original. And generally speaking, most translations, they try and keep an honest translation of the original. That's my opinion anyway. But look, I'm just a lay person here, and finds the faith fascinating. Leave me your comments below, and that was just my reflection on translating the Bible. God bless. Take care. Bye bye.